Now that you have some experience in using your torch, let us move on to explain how to produce a basic butt weld. A butt joint is created when two metal sections of similar thickness are joined edge to edge, or end to end. In our demonstration, we are going to be joining 3.2 mm mild steel plates in a butt weld configuration. The first task is to set up the plates upon a suitable flat support base, and then create a root gap. The purpose of a root gap is to provide a channel into which the weld can penetrate. Without a root gap, the weld would be on the surface, and the joint will be extremely weak. The width of the root gap should be approximately the same as the plate thickness or the filler rod diameter. The next step involves tack welding the two plates together. A tack weld is a 4 to 5 mm long temporary weld used to secure the two pieces together and keep them in relative position to each other whilst the final weld is made. Tack welds are normally placed at about 75 mm intervals along the joint. One method of tack welding will now be demonstrated. The first tack is made at the center of the workpiece. Heat must be applied to both plates so that a welding pool develops evenly on either side of the root gap. Sufficient filler material must be introduced into the pool to ensure full penetration into the root gap. Having completed the center tack, we need to pay attention to the root gap. As a result of contraction in the weld, the gap will pull, resulting in one end or the other closing. In our example, the gap has pulled in at the far end and opened slightly at the opposite end. As a result of this, we must continue tacking on the wide side, which will effectively tend to pull the gap inward. With tacking completed on the wide side, we must next check the narrow side. In this instance, the gap is still too narrow, so here's what we do to increase it. Placing the workpiece onto a hard and flat surface, we give the center weld a couple of sharp blows with a hammer. This will spread the weld and serve to open the narrow end of the root gap. A check with the filler rod will confirm that the gap is now correct, and we can therefore continue to tack the rest of the joint. When all tacking welds have been completed, we may then proceed with the final weld. Another tacking technique is to set up the plates in such a way that the root gap is deliberately tapered. The first tack is made at the narrow end, and this pulls the gap in slightly. Further tacking is made progressively along the join, and with each tack the gap reduces. This technique requires experience, but it is an effective and acceptable method of controlling the root gap. Practice making tack welds in your workplace before going on to the next skill, that of the actual welding process.